Hi, this is Dan Sullivan. I'd like to welcome you to the Multiplier Mindset Podcast. One of the biggest ways that entrepreneurs get in trouble in their careers is that they forget a very simple truth, that all business is simply relationships, and actually all business is actually personal relationships. So people talk about campaigns and markets and industries and market share, and they have all these terms for measuring business success. But these are all abstractions. We don't experience markets. We don't experience transactions. We don't experience volume. We don't experience any of those things. All we experience actually is just relationships that are either cooperative and successful or relationships which are not cooperative and very frustrating. So a lot of entrepreneurs think that they can, for example, bypass relationships with technology. But unfortunately, to have really good technology, you have to have relationships with a lot of people who are really good with technology. So if you're not good with relationships, you won't end up with technology actually happening for you. So I said, it's all we have as human beings, is that relationships are the water that us human fish swim in. This is all we really have. And there's all sorts of rules about relationships that make them either positive or negative. And these are probably no different than they were 3,000 years ago. First of all, that one of the things of having really great relationships is what I would call habits that give you credibility as an individual. The first one is show up on time. Okay, if you agree to a particular time to show up and meet with someone, always be on time. As a matter of fact, be 5 or 10 minutes early. I strive for 10 minutes early, so I'm completely focused and I'm completely relaxed. The second habit is do what you say. If you tell someone that you're going to do something, do it. Or get back to them and say, I said I was going to do this, but I can't do it, and I just wondered if I can rearrange it or we can come up with another solution. But never, ever commit to doing something where you don't follow through. It costs you your reputation. The third thing is anything that you promise that you're going to do, finish it. Actually finish what you start. Have a habit, have a reputation of always finishing what you start. And the other thing is always say please and thank you. One of them shows respect, the other one shows gratitude. A respectful, grateful person has a tremendous credibility in all their relationships. So I know a lot of people who are super talented, they show up late. I know people who are really, really smart, they don't do what they say they're going to do. I know people who have a huge reputation, they don't finish what they start. I know people who they're really amazing and they're really impressive, but they never say please and thank you. And what I noticed with all these individuals after a while is that nobody wants to work with them. And in spite of their talent, in spite of their intelligence, in spite of their reputation, even in spite of the fact that they're charismatic, all of a sudden no doors open for that individual. And the reason is they're clueless as it comes to relationship. They just don't treat other human beings right. And they think that it's about who they are and how smart they are and how brilliant they are. It has nothing to do with that. They just don't treat other human beings in a way that continually increases a very positive credibility and a very positive reputation. So that's at the heart of all relationship. And I would say that about 95% of all the relationship problems that people have in the world, not just in their business life, but also in their personal life, is because they don't show up on time, don't do what they say they're going to do, don't finish what they start, and don't say please and thank you. Very easy habits, requires practice. The other thing is, and it's a very interesting thing, is that it's far more powerful to be interested than it is to be interesting. So a lot of people are constantly striving for ways to dress right and groom well and actually to speak well so that they're really interesting, and nobody really cares because other people are also trying to be interesting. So I, a long time ago, didn't feel I wanted to get into the interesting competition with other people. So what I switched to is that I would just be interested and I would ask questions about an individual, what their experience was. One of the big things that I always try to do is to get people to talk about how they got to where they are right now. I said, boy, you're so successful right now. Where did all this start? I mean, how did you get started? And what were sort of the growth stages? What were the milestones? When I was 6 years old, I learned this, that a child can totally be very, very successful in adult company. You know, I could talk to people when I was 6 years old who were 60 years old, and I could keep them talking for 2 or 3 hours just by asking them questions. And I was born in the 1940s, so when I was 6 years old, it was 1950, and I knew people who had been born before the car, people who had been born before electricity, people who had been born before the telephone. And I can remember keeping 70-year-olds talking for 2 hours and say, you know, how is it possible to live on a farm when you didn't have electricity? And all that was worth a half hour or 40 minutes plus a glass of milk and some cookies. That always got me rewarded. And I just discovered very, very early that people love being asked questions about themselves. And you don't have to know anything to ask great questions. And so nobody's interested in your answers. They're enormously impressed with your questions. I remember a man who was a friend of my partner, Bab Smith, and her father was with General Patton during the Second World War. I just happened to be at an afternoon function where he was sitting there and nobody was talking to him, and I went over and I sat with him. And boy, oh boy, did I ask him questions. And he talked for 4 hours. It was from about 1 o'clock to 5 o'clock. And about halfway through, he got up and he went out to the restroom and he passed by Babs and he says, you know, you have an incredibly intelligent husband. The whole point was I hadn't said a thing about myself. I hadn't really shared anything about myself. But what I had asked is a whole series of questions that allowed him to talk about the remarkable life that he had led and the remarkable experiences that he had. And therefore, he associated what he was able to think about and what he was able to talk about during that afternoon, which was probably a painful experience and it might have been a very boring experience, but it was a fascinating experience simply because I had asked questions for 4 hours. So this is simply general tips that are good whether you're 6 years old or whether you're 86 years old. Show up on time, do what you say you're going to do, finish what you start, say please and thank you. Those are your credibility habits. And then the other thing, don't strive to be interesting, strive to be interested. And the best way to do that is to ask really great questions that allow other people to actually talk about their experiences and to explore their thinking. And that's how you establish great relationships in any situation on the planet every day of your life for the rest of your life.